Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Sierra, also known as C, and for today's video, I'm going to be making my own rating system. I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I just don't feel like the current rating system I've been using or have used in the past has really quite gotten to what I want to be rating my books as. So I just decided I'm going to create my own. The system that I currently use is the CAWPILE system, and I write that in my journal to help find my current rating. If you have not heard of the CAWPILE, it is a rating system that helps you find the score based off of 7 different categories, one for each letter of the name. So C for characters, A for atmosphere, W for writing style, P for plot, I for intrigue, L for logic, and E for entertainment. And then so you rank each of those categories out of 10, add them up, divided by 7 since there are 7 categories, and that is your average out of 10, and then divided by 2 if you want to see it as a typical 5-star rating score. I don't think this rating system is bad, and honestly it works, but for me, I think CAWPILE is more so a rating of the work behind a book, and I don't feel like it accounts very much for the heart of the book. Typically for me, if I cry with a book or laugh with a book or whatever, just I felt a lot with this book, that typically is a 5-star read for me, because that's what my reading is about in here. It's about my enjoyment, my connection with the world through these books. And so I feel like the CAWPILE doesn't exactly account for that, as sometimes there is the plot that wasn't perfect, it wasn't ideal, or the atmosphere wasn't perfect, there were some errors in it, and it brings the score down, and I just don't feel like that's right for the heart of the book. I just felt like that would be a 5-star, so I didn't feel like that scoring method was perfect for me. The other issue I had with the CAWPILE is that there are too many factors to judge, and I feel like they're all a little vague. Characters, there's so many different things you can analyze about a character. You could love some characters, you could feel like others are really flat. I just feel like it needed to be expanded on a little bit more in my brain, which is totally fine if you want to use CAWPILE, but then have some guiding questions of what you feel like there is there. But for me, it was a little vague. Intrigue and entertainment, I always kind of muddled in my brain, because I feel like if I'm intrigued by a book, I'm entertained by the book, because I want to keep reading it. So that one was a little confusing for me to score. I know that there's different definitions and there's different ways everyone uses it, but for me, I always felt like they were a little too close to the same. Same thing with other categories of it. It just was not working for me, essentially. So then I would think I would rate from my heart what I feel like the book deserves. But I feel like that doesn't account for the technical skills required to write a book either, because if I loved it, I loved it. There's nothing to do with the plot or structure or anything like that. So that wouldn't work for me either. Instead, I created a 3-part rating system, which I am going to call the intuition and analytical ratings. The step 1 would be the intuition rating, which is just what is your heart and your body, what is it telling you to rate this book. This has to go first in the list for me, because otherwise I'll be overthinking it and thinking, oh yeah, well they didn't really do that well, so maybe that's not a 5-star read or whatever. So first things first is my intuition rating, and that's out of a typical 5-star score. So I'm just gonna rate it what my heart says to rate it. And then step 2 comes in, and that is the analytical rating. This one was really hard for me to figure out, because I kind of needed to narrow it down to what matters to me in a book, and it's hard to account for all of that in one rating. So obviously I didn't. It doesn't include everything that I could feel about a book or think about a book, but it doesn't have to. It's just a score of what I'm thinking about at the time, so let's not overanalyze it. I decided that the first thing that mattered the most to me was the writing style. I wanted to add some guiding questions under each of these, so that way I know exactly what I'm thinking about here. Obviously, there could be more to be thinking about in each of these categories, but I just wanted to really set in my mind what that means. So for writing style, the things I am looking for is the ease of the reading, the use of the author's voice in the writing, The lyricism and other little beautiful aspects of the writing usually adds a lot to the score for me. Other errors I find, etc., etc. And yeah, that's what I would consider as things that I would really need to focus on when rating for the writing style. The second category here is also from CAWPILE, and that is characters. I just feel like that's a really important one, as characters are a big part of us connecting with the book. So some guiding questions or guiding points that I put on here are whether the characters are flat or round, whether I've connected with the characters on an emotional level, if I saw progression or growth from those characters. Different little things like that I feel are really big parts of that rating for me. The next category I wrote down would be story, which can be seen as plot here. I just feel like I expanded on that a little bit. But some guiding points I would think about is how is the pacing and structure? Are there any plot holes? Did I connect with the story itself? Did it feel like the story went from a cause and effect standpoint, always having a purpose behind each of its actions? Or did the author kind of drift off in its storytelling and it doesn't really connect to everything perfectly? Different things like that I felt were important to me in terms of story. I kind of merged entertainment and intrigue into one part of this rating for me, just because I do feel like they are really connected. And this one I called the presentation, and that is just how much I really wanted to read this book ongoing throughout the book, whether I would read book 2, how much I connected with it, if I loved the story itself. This seems very close to the intuition rating, and it is, and that's just because I do think our feelings are a big part of the analytical part of a book. It would feel wrong to not rate a book and not include that emotion behind it, but it does have a little bit more expansion on that about like how closely I was following along to the book, whether I really, really want to see the next book, or if I'm just more like, it was good, I don't think I want to continue, but etc., etc. And that's that one. The final category I am rating for in this analytical rating, and I don't feel like it is accounted for very often in ratings, and that's to each their own, but I felt like it was a big part for me, and that is ethics. You'll see how I do the scoring in a minute here, but this kind of starts most books I would hope off at a good at least 1-star rating, and that is because I do think most books have good ethics, but I wanted to include this here because that is the only reason a book would really go below 1 star to me, is if it had AI writing, if it felt racially wrong the way that they were writing things. Anything that feels morally wrong and did not follow my code of ethics that I would believe in, I would give less than. Most books, like I said, will have a full score rating on this one, so it'll be extra concerning to me, the ones that do not have a full score rating on that one. So I don't know, that one's kind of a freebie most of the time, but I do think that is an important part of my rating process for me. Now that I figured out all of my categories, the next step would be to rate each of those categories. There are 5 for simplicity's sake, and that is going to be basically out of a 0 to 10 scale, but written as a 0.0 to 1.0 scale, just so it's simpler when you add it up, which is easy. It's, the same scale. So a 0.0 or up to 1.0, 1.0 being my 10 and 0.0 being my 0, obviously. And that is the first step, is just rating each of those 5 categories on that scale. Once I have all of those ratings together, I will just add them all up, and it will be a typical 5-star scale up to 5 stars. And that would be my analytical rating. My next step would be my overall rating, which is just taking those 2 scores, the intuition one and the analytical one, adding them together, and then dividing it by 2. So it's also on a 5-star scale. And this is the overall score that I will be using on Goodreads and Storygraph and other things like that. On my journal, I will include all 3 scores because I do think it's important when looking back at the books I've read to know which ones I've connected with emotionally, which ones maybe had better writing skills attached, etc., etc. All of that stuff, I want to include all of those scores on my journal, but because that's not an option on Goodreads and stuff, I will keep the overall score as my score there. And that's it, basically. That's my rating system that I'm going to be using. Obviously, I might make some tweaks here and there. My way of rating is going to change as I keep reading books. I might find different things that are more important to me. The things that are important to me now might not be important to me later, so there might be changes. That's okay. For currently, I am calling this the Intuition Analytical Rating System, just because that keeps it simple and obvious in my head when I need to recall it. But call it whatever you want, or don't call it anything. I don't care. But that's my new rating system. I created this little journal page so I can look back at it and also have it in my journal in case I'm ever like, what was this rating system I was using? So I have that in here now. I'm going to show it to you so that you can see. I still need to add my guiding questions in here. I'm going to add like an extra little sheet here that I can put that on, but this is just kind of an overview for me to look back at, and I think it looks cute. I also created this little graphic with the breakdown of this process I'm using here for my rating, just in case you want to screenshot it, look at it later, try it for yourself, etc., etc. I'm curious what you think of my rating system, so if you try it for yourself, comment down below what you think. If you haven't tried it, still let me know if you like this rating system or not. Let me know down in the comments what rating system you use and how that works for you, or if you don't use any rating system at all. That's perfectly fine too. Thank you so much for sticking around and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more bookish content. Until next time, happy reading. I don't remember what I just said because that's not all written down on here. I just rambled. I be rambling, man. I'm out of here.